Hi guys, my name is David and welcome back to my channel. Because this video is coming out during Christmas time, I thought it would be kind of interesting if I did something a bit different this year. So I found this assortment of hot chocolate flavours, which is Grinch themed, and I thought it'd be kind of interesting if I like picked one at random and during my video to review it and to give you guys what I thought about that particular flavour. So before I go and pick one, this little close up. The one behind the Grinch is gingerbread. So let me just pick one flavour at random. Let me just look away. So we've got this one, which is the one right in the middle. And this one is just boring milk chocolate. So let me just make this and I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I have just made it. And yeah, it doesn't really smell of anything, outstanding. It looks like a very weak hot chocolate, but yeah. I'll wait for it to cool down and then I'll try it because I don't want to burn myself. So the book that I'm going to be reviewing today was sent to me through a small author that reached out to me and wanted me to give him an honest review of his book. The book is called A Wizard's Dream. I can't say the author's name and I don't really want to try because I don't want to butcher it, but I will have his name up on the screen as well as the book cover on the screen as well. This is a fantasy book and I read it once before, or part of it once before, and I temporarily DNF'd it. Not sure why, I think I had other stuff to do at the time. But I went back into it and it took me ages to get through this book, absolutely ages. I was reading it so slowly and I told the author this and he said that it was meant to be read slowly. And in a way it is, and in a way it isn't. I mean, I felt that if I read, small chunks at a time, well, smallish, biggish chunks, if that made any sense, then I felt that that would probably be the best way to go with reading this book. I must be honest, my experience with this book is kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, I did have fun reading this book, and it was a journey rereading this book. But it was a slog. It was boring at times and it felt to be a bit of a chore. So before I get into this video, as always, this is going to be a spoiler-free video and this is going to be my own thoughts and feelings regarding this book. If you read this book and you absolutely loved it, if this was a book that was your favourite of that year, or if you completely disagree with everything I'm about to say, then that's fine, you're entitled to that. But please remember guys, in this video, this is only my thoughts and feelings only. And this is going to be more of a discussion rather than a review. So this book focuses around our main character, who is a female wizard. Well, to more bluntly, she is a female that has been adopted into a tribe of dwarves. And her name is Astra. Now, Astra, as far as I can remember, was found in the mountains and she has been brought up to be a dwarf. But she wants to become a wizard. She wants to, learn spells and to, be a full-fledged wizard. She already has a staff which she uses, and I'm pretty sure it's a wizard staff, but it does spells like conjure fire and all that stuff. I'm not entirely sure what other spells she has. And she is also accompanied by her best friends called Vagran. Apologies if I've mispronounced that, but that is probably as closest I'm ever going to get it. Now, Vagran is a big talking eagle who can shoot electric bolts out of its beak or talons or claws or whatever. It can emit electric energy and shoot bolts of lightning and electricity, and it does this when it's in a fight, basically. So the book opens up with a storyteller, and he has a or she rather, because I think it's a she. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They have all these kids around him, and they're about to tell a story, and the story is of Astra and how she became a wizard. And then it jumps into Astra's story, where the dwarves and the goblins are at war, and they are fighting each other. And at the beginning, they're kind of discussing about what they should do to prevent this, and what they should do about the goblins and their attacking these villages or whatever. And then it like jumps backwards in time to when Astra was young and she found Vagran, and it's pretty much her journey to become a wizard. Finding the wizards, learning their magic, being accepted, finding out who she is, where she came from, and trying to find herself. This book can get very complicated because it does have loads of side characters, but it does actually have loads of side quests. They kind of go to other places, and I'm like, why did they go there? And it doesn't really seem that focused. There's no like end goal, like defeating a bad guy or acquiring a specific object. I think the point of it is it's the journey that Astra goes on to become a wizard and to find out who she is and to feel accepted. She's a very, very strong individual. I didn't really have any issue with any of the characters. One of the biggest things that I didn't really like about it, or this story rather, is that the dialogue in the book is very, very minimal. There are loads of chapters in this book that don't have a single sentence of dialogue. It's simply description about the environment, description about what the characters are doing, what they're thinking, how they're feeling. And fair enough, if they're by themselves, they can't really have a conversation with themselves. But I'm sure the author could have got round that that little mishap or that little scenario. And I would have thought it'd been better if dialogue was more heavy in this book, because you can really get a sense about who a character is by the way they talk and express themselves verbally. And it's kind of, in this book, it's more of show and don't tell type of thing. Another thing in this book which you have to learn to accept from page one, this is something that is continuous throughout the book, is that this author references things in nature, like mountains, rivers, a field, flowers, anything in nature that you can think about, trees. He refers to them as either male or female. So if you are reading a section where Astra is going on a journey and it talks about, okay, this he was a mighty river and he was very strong and all that stuff, it kind of took me out of the story, and I'm like thinking, okay, who is this he that we are reading about? I mean, is it a character that I missed, that I overlooked, that went completely over my head? But don't worry, guys, that is just a way that the author has decided to, I don't know, like differentiate himself from other fantasy writers by referring to things in nature as either a male or a female. None of this scenery is alive like Treebeard. You don't get any. Well, you do get moving plant creatures, but I'll get to the creatures in a minute. But they are just standard parts of the scenery. Now, going to the creatures of this world, this is a typical epic fantasy book, because this is what this is. You're going to get an epic fantasy book that is a slow burn. If you are used to reading stories like Lord of the Rings, the pacing of this book is very similar to the pacing of that book. It is very slow. It is very methodical. Yes, it can get very tedious at times. The action in this book is very, very minimal. It's not really. I mean, that's not what its focus is. Its focus is on Astra and her journey of discovering who she is as a character and learning all these spells. The creatures in this book are very. Some of them are very typical. You do get the standard ones, like dwarves, elves, wizards, dragons, but you do also get other creatures in this book which are, I wouldn't say 100% unique to this world and to this book, because at this point everyone's getting inspiration from other books and other movies and TV shows. But there are creatures in this book that I haven't come across before. Now, the characters were fine. I thought that they were fine. Some of them I didn't really care for. As I said, the pacing of this book, because it's so slow, it does get very, very, very boring at times. It can get very slow sometimes. If I wasn't reading this, if a author didn't reach out to me and say, okay, would you mind reading my book? If I came across this on, on the Kindle app, and because it was cheap, and I clicked on it because it looked cool or interesting, and I bought it off my own back, then chances are I would have DNF'd this book about a third, or if not halfway through. I did feel that it was more of a chore and a challenge to get through this book. And I felt that if I read like big parts of it, I felt my mind kind of drifting and I was kind of losing interest. And plus, because I'm a mood reader, I read what I'm in the mood for. And I'm like thinking that, okay, am I in the mood for this? And if the answer is no, then it's tough because I've got to get through this book. Now, with that said, there is a lot of stuff in this book. You cannot read this book once and get every single reference and understand every single thing about this book and about this world and about these characters simply by reading it once. I strongly feel that this is a book that you have to read numerous times in order to understand it. Now, I have read some big epic fantasy books before, and yes, some of them I understood more than others, but I think that's because they probably had a TV show based on them, so I knew somewhat the material. But I have to admit, guys, that because this book took me ages to read, and I do mean it took me probably about 3 or 4 months to read. Let's say 4 months to get through this book. It took me a long time to get through this book. This isn't a particularly long story or a long book. It is about 600 pages, 600 or 700 pages long. But when I was reading it on my Kindle, I could read 5 chapters, and the progression percentage on my Kindle only said that I made about like a 2% progress throughout the book. So that could get a bit disheartening. Well, it did get a bit disheartening for me, as I was thinking, I've read so much, but I've only made such a little progress. But because this book took me such a long time to get through, and I wasn't reading it every single day, at the end of the book I was, but originally I was only reading it on my days off. It was kind of like a security blanket, sort of, but one that's less like soft and like it smells nice and it's got a nice design on it. This security blanket for this book is more of a like a bit of old rag that is comforting in its own way. It's always there, and it does give you a little bit of warmth. It does give you a little bit of comfort. Yes, it may smell a little bit funky, but it is always there whenever you need it, regardless of what's going on in your life. That rag blanket is always there. I'm not sure where I was going with that, but that's the best way that I could describe this book. Yes, we did have kind of parts in it where we kind of clashed, and I was thinking, oh, do I have to read this today? But it kind of gave me some comfort. When I finished this, I was like thinking to myself, oh, it's over. I'm not going to be with these characters anymore unless I read this again, which I am planning to read this again, guys. So I didn't completely hate this book. But because I spent so much time with these characters, and even though we didn't gel 110% with these characters and these situations and the storyline and the plot as a whole, it was always there and it was a somewhat comfort to me. And I strongly believe that when I do reread this, and as I said, I am planning to reread this book, it's not because I want to please the author or that I want to try desperately to figure out what I just read or understand it more. I generally would really love to reread this story and also to take my time reading it. And I strongly believe that when I do, that I will appreciate this story more. I will understand it a bit better. And who knows, I will probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, like it that little bit more. Now, when it comes to what I'm going to currently rate this book, only having read it once, I was tempted to give it a 3 stars. But I want to be fair to you guys, and I want to be fair to the author himself. I am going to rate this book a 2.5 stars out of 5. Now, when it comes to would I recommend this book to a fantasy reader or someone that wants to get into fantasy, if you're trying to get into fantasy, I wouldn't start off with this one. I would start off with something a bit more simpler and straightforward. If you have read loads of complex epic fantasy stories, maybe some grimdark hit here and there, then I would recommend this book, or I would at least give it a try. The writing style is very good. I didn't have any issue with the writing style or anything like that. Just trying to think if there's anything else I want to say that I've missed. I don't think I've missed anything, and this is very, very minute. The ending of this book kind of leaves on a cliffhanger. I think that the author intends for this to be a series of some sort. If he does release a second book, then I would definitely be up for reading that. Just give me some time to reread book 1 before I go into book 2. So I will have a list of any information that the author has sent to me that he wants me to put in the description, like contact information. If you would like to reach out to this author, this is on Kindle, obviously, and you can get it as a paperback. So let me know if you have read this book. Let me know what did you think about it. Let me know if you've maybe been encouraged or inspired to pick it up. And it was just unfortunate about my kind of mixed double-edged sword feelings regarding this book. It did remind me a lot about the Sword Defiance because I was reading that story, but the tone of that book, the tone of the characters, the flavour of that world reminded me a lot about Wizard's Dream. So before the author goes into book 2, I would kind of recommend that he read that book because it might give him kind of some inspiration. And I do think that it would benefit him if he made it the second book more streamlined. Like maybe Astra has to try to like find out who her parents were. So that could be like her goal. The end goal of that book is to find out where she came from, why her parents left or whatever, and who her parents were. That could possibly be an idea for book 2, and then the author could have all these like side plots going on everywhere. And I do think that it would kind of more benefit him if he made all the chapters about a specific character, and at the beginning of each chapter it had kind of like Astra, then chapter 1, then we can like know, right, this chapter's only going to be about our main hero, and so each chapter focuses on a specific character. So then when we went into the chapter, we would know it would kind of be more focused. So I don't know, I'm trying to be fair with this whole video. I didn't really want to like bash this book because I could have done the whole mini rant for this book, but I didn't want to because I read horror, fantasy and sci-fi mostly. Horror is really confined. It's only in a handful of locations and it only has a handful of characters. So the concept and the whole storyline as a whole is very small. With sci-fi, it can get a bit bigger, so when you have more characters and it may be on a slightly bigger environment, like a spaceship or a planet, or a specific section on a planet, or in a solar system or whatever, or a small section of space. But in fantasy books, authors have to create a whole world, a whole civilization, a whole culture for all these different races. It is so big, and I can tell you guys for a fact that this author really thought about this world. It wouldn't surprise me at all that this author has like notebooks and notebooks and notebooks on the backstory and lore of this world, and that's really great. I mean, writing fantasy is probably the hardest genre that you could write, because you have to think about all that stuff before you even write a single word of your book. Because if you don't fully understand your fantasy world, then how can you portray that on the page to a reader that has never been in that world in the first place? And for an author that is unknown to come in and attempt to do that is extremely brave and courageous, and the author should be commended for such bravery and for that bravery, regardless whether the book is a masterpiece or whether it is an absolute trash of a book. So I don't really want to, unload all my negativity on this book, because not all my thoughts about this book are negative. Some of them are positive and some of them are negative. And I hope I've portrayed my feelings for this book, both good and bad, fully in this video, and also supplied the author with some valuable feedback and insights, and maybe some inspiration for book 2, which I am going to be reading when it comes out. So guys, before I go, let me just taste the hot chocolate. Hopefully it's not gone too cold, because this has been a long ass video and I'm going to have to edit this after this. So let's taste it. Yeah, it's okay. It's a very weak hot chocolate. I might put milk in the next one, but it is kind of a strong aftertaste. Not sure why it's Grinch inspired. I mean, all the flavors aren't really Grinch related. I mean, some of them are Christmas related, but yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I've had better and certainly I've had worse. So guys, that's been my video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And with all that out of the way, I'll see you in my next video.